Hi everyone, and welcome back to Off the Cuff with me, your host, Kaylin. So today this video is all about physical therapy. So there are 4 disclaimers that I want to put out there before we get started. So number 1, this video is not to take place of any actual physical therapy. It is always best to go out and seek a professional. Don't do these exercises at home. Please seek professional help. Number 2, every physical therapy routine will vary based on how your physical therapist does things and the state of your pelvic floor. Number 3, Kegel exercises. I know many of the times when people have pelvic floor dysfunction of any kind, Kegels are brought up. Do not do Kegel exercises until you have been evaluated by a pelvic floor specialist of some kind. Most of the time when you have a spastic pelvic floor and it's tight, Kegels are only tightening an already tight muscle, and that's not something that you want to do. Now, if someone is on the opposite spectrum and they have a weak pelvic floor, Kegels may work for them and may be beneficial. But again, whether you are on the weak side or on the spastic side, it's always best to go get a recommendation from a pelvic floor specialist and allow them to give you the okay to do Kegel exercises freely. And number 4, be as honest as possible with your therapist and the things that you feel when you've tried insertion and what the pain feels like. And what I mean is using descriptive words like sharp, dull, burning, etc. And where you felt it and what you were doing, whether you were putting in a tampon, putting in a finger, putting in a dilator, attempting PIV. It's best to be as transparent with them as possible to better treat and evaluate what's going on. So as I talked about, I discovered ways to begin handling my pelvic floor dysfunction by the group, and that's my support group, Vaginismus Support. And that was where I learned about a wide range of different options, such as dilation, physical therapy. There's also biofeedback, Botox. That's the only ones I'm really familiar with. I've heard of others, but those are the big ones, and I'll kind of touch on that a little bit later. So I ended up finding my physical therapist after I had an appointment with an awful midwife. It was December of 2017, and I had my first yeast infection. I had no idea, what I was experiencing. I just knew it was uncomfortable and very itchy. And so I had to meet with her, and at the time I could not undergo any type of pelvic exam, so I really didn't know how I was going to be able to get treated and diagnosed correctly. I will actually be telling that story in my next video titled The Medical Field. It was an awful appointment. I have a ton of really bad experiences with gynecologists. But the only positive thing that came out of that appointment was I was able to get diagnosed correctly, and I was treated, and I was fine after a couple days. But after that appointment, the midwife handed me a sheet of paper that had a physical therapist for the pelvic floor in my local area, also urogynecologists also in my area. And what a urogynecologist is, they are gynecologists that specialize in diagnosing and being able to help you with treatment for your pelvic floor dysfunction. So they are a positive place to start. They're a little bit more knowledgeable than just your regular gynecologist. So I began dilating at home in March of 2018, and that was how I obviously wanted to cure myself, was in the privacy of my own home. I ended up obviously needing physical therapy. So I dilated since March of 2018, and I didn't go to physical therapy until August of 2018. So there was a little bit of time in between. What prompted me to go to physical therapy was I kind of deadlocked on dilator number 3, and when I would try to insert things or have things move around, whether it was Cody's finger, I just wasn't getting the comfortable sensations that I wanted. I just wasn't finding the comfort, so I just wanted to seek extra help. So the first day I seen my physical therapist was August 6th, but prior to my appointment, I found that sheet that midwife had given me months before, and I found the place, and I looked him up on Facebook, and any good, smart person would read reviews on a place, especially dealing with such an intimate issue. So I read reviews, and they were all really positive. I didn't want to call because I didn't have the courage to do that, to be honest. So what I did was I actually messaged them, like private messaged them over Facebook, asking them if they worked with the pelvic floor or know anything about a term called vaginismus. Another reason I didn't call was because, as I said, an issue is that vaginismus isn't a universal term that people understand. And most of the time, you're not going to talk to the physical therapist on the phone. It's probably going to be a receptionist. So I figured I'll just send a Facebook message. And at that point, my physical therapist actually ran the account. She's the owner of her practice. So I actually got directly in contact with her. And she actually asked if she could call me. So it was a different day, and she gave me a call, and she just wanted to hear about my pelvic pain history and kind of get a feel for what I, was looking for and what I had been through. So I made the appointment. So August 6th of 2018 was my first physical therapy appointment. I was very nervous. Cody did come with me. I always recommend, if you're starting pelvic floor physical therapy, especially your first appointment, even if you don't intend to do internal work, always bring a lubricant that you like. So I was anxious. I mean, the practice is probably only 10 or 15 minutes away from my house, so it wasn't a long drive, but it was long enough to build up the anxiety. So Cody and I arrived, we checked in, we sat down. My physical therapist, called us back, and we went into a room. And it had a door. I mean, we were completely enclosed, and it had a physical therapy table, I guess you could say. And the three of us kind of just talked, and although we had the conversation, it was kind of the preface of my history. I gave her the story again, and she took notes. And then we started with external exercises. So it was things with like the legs and the lower back, because all of it is tied to the pelvic floor. And we did that for probably a half hour. And then she asked me the daunting question, do I want to do internal work? I mean, of course, I didn't, because I knew it was going to be painful. But at the same time, of course, I did, because I wanted to get better, and I didn't want to waste my time or money for treatment. So we did internal work. So what that entails is she left the room, she brought me a gown and some towels and extra pillows, and she exited the room, and I had to undress from the bottom down and lay on my back on the table, and she came in and put on a glove and used the lubricant that I brought, and she started to try to go inside me, and it was really painful. It burned like hell. It was everything that I experienced, probably, and then some, because I was really anxious. Even though I haven't talked about it much, at this point, I had already been through a handful of gynecologists. So I was already very skeptical of any medical professional. So there was also added anxiety. And so we did internal work, I would think, for at least 25 minutes to a half hour. It felt like an eternity. And it burned and it burned. And she listened to me, and she asked me, what are you feeling? What does it feel like here? I'm pressing here. I mean, the whole time I was probably like really tense. So she was like, all right, let's get ready to wrap up, internal work. And at this point, I'm like, your whole finger's in, right? Like, that's how much pain I'm in. She got to the first knuckle. Not even technically inside my vagina. But she let me know that this is doable. We can work with this. And over time, we slowly got her whole finger into my vagina. And then once that was bearable, she was able to start the real physical therapy portion, which is, I I don't know if I say it correctly. It's myofascial release, where she can start either from the right or the left and go down, like with her finger, and all the way. So she focuses all the way from the 3 o'clock to the 9 o'clock. There's no reason to go, to the 12 o'clock, like I said in my previous video, because your pubic bone is there, your pelvis bone. So the muscles are just surrounding that. So it's just important to work on the right side, the left side, and down. My main issue, my left side was always tighter than my right side, and levator ani, which is right at the 6 o'clock, and it goes inward, and it kind of lines where your vagina and your colon meet, and it's that muscle in between the two, and that one gave me a lot of issues for a very long time. Also, myofascial release is also called pressure point release, so there's a couple different terminology for it, so it's the same thing. And that's pretty much what we would do every time. Go in, get comfortable, start on one side, slowly swoop down. At that point, if I felt anything while she was moving, I would tell her to stop, and we would hold the spasm. Spasm feels like burning, but over time you will feel that it will release or become less strong. And the purpose of this is that your muscles will slowly learn a new muscle memory so that one day when you're relaxed, it does not go back into a spastic state. And I know I've said that in previous videos, but that is the purpose. And even now, sometimes before my husband and I have sex, I will actually have him go in and do pressure point release. He doesn't have the greatest hand like my physical therapist because she knows what she's feeling, but I'm able to guide him and tell him, when to stop if I'm feeling a little uncomfortable, or if I feel like that muscle needs to stretch a little bit before we get going. No, it's not the sexiest thing in the world, but when you finally reach that point, you'll do anything to reach optimal comfort. So that was my first appointment, external and internal work, and we did that for a while up until the point where we just did internal work. We would start usually with external and then just do internal, but as things progressed, external kind of dropped off. I was a bad student. I wouldn't really go home and do my external exercises. I was more interested in just dilating at home and then going to physical therapy. Dilation was actually not part of my physical therapy routine. Some physical therapists have you come in with your dilator kit. It was just something that I did on my own, and physical therapy was separate. Sometimes I would dilate before my appointment to try to help with any discomfort. Did it really? No, because dilators don't work out spasm. Physical therapy does. So dilators were not part of my routine, but it could be part of someone else's, and that's fine. So I did mention some other type of things or options. Now, there is a thing called a biofeedback, and it's a biofeedback machine. I've never personally used it, but my understanding is that when you work with a physical therapist and you can endure something being inserted, they insert a sensor, I guess, and you contract and relax your muscles. And it's just a way to test your ability to be able to contract and relax pretty much on cue. Also, Botox. This is considered experimental, which is why a lot of insurance companies will not cover it if you do this. You meet with a licensed doctor, they put you under anesthesia, and they inject Botox into your pelvic floor muscles. This only lasts, I think, about 2 to 6 months, but this is just enough pretty much to take the edge off to start dilating and start doing things. Again, insurances give you a hard time. I have heard that some people have been successful with it. There have been people that have had to do it multiple times. So that's what I have for physical therapy. If you have any questions, you know my email. questions, concerns, anything like that, anything that I can go over better or questions that you may have, I can certainly put in the next video. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys next time.